Hook, the greatest lie you were ever told, is disguised as poetry and whispered by the people you trust most. It has ruined more lives and bankrupted more dreams than any war in human history. They told you to follow your heart, and it is destroying you. You have been lied to since the day you were born. A beautiful, cinematic, glittering lie that has quietly ruined more lives, destroyed more relationships, and bankrupted more dreams than any war in human history. It is a poison disguised as poetry, whispered to you by movies, music, and the people you trust the most. They told you to follow your heart, and in doing so, they handed you the blueprint to your own destruction. Before I expose exactly how this lie is being weaponized against you at this very second, Brain Boost US 05 warmly welcomes you to our community. If you are ready to shatter the illusions holding you back and rebuild your mind, hit that subscribe button right now. Your support is the engine that gives us the motivation to continue creating these profound videos for your future. Let us strip away the Hollywood filter and look at the raw, unedited footage of reality. I want you to think deeply about the most catastrophic regrets of your life. Think about that agonizing text message you sent at 2 in the morning while burning with blind jealousy. Think about the financial investment you made while riding a high of euphoric greed, or the irreplaceable bridge you burned with someone you loved simply because your fragile ego was bruised and sheer rage hijacked your vocal cords. Look closely at those moments of wreckage. Were those decisions made by a calm, calculating mind? Absolutely not. They were dictated by the very heart society commands you to trust. In its rawest emotional state, your heart is not a mystical compass guiding you to ultimate truth. It is a catastrophic liability. It is a chaotic, unpredictable pendulum swinging violently between blinding euphoria and crushing despair. When you blindly follow it, you are effectively handing the steering wheel of your life over to a blackout drunk driver while speeding down a cliffside road in the dark. What terrifies me the most is how easily this biological flaw makes us prey. The modern world is a highly predatory landscape. Marketers, politicians, and the toxic individuals lingering in your personal life do not target your intellect. They aim straight for your chest. They know that if they can make you angry enough, terrified enough, or desperately infatuated enough, your rational brain will shut off completely. You become nothing but a puppet dancing on strings woven from your own unhealed triggers. You buy things you cannot afford to impress people you despise. You scream at strangers over invisible ideologies, and you stay in relationships that are rotting your soul, all because it feels a certain way. This is the brutal, hidden cost of emotional manipulation. You are no longer the director of your own life. You are merely a tragic supporting character in someone else's script. But there is a way out of this tyranny. Thousands of years ago, a rebellion was born in the dust of ancient Greece and Rome. These philosophical heavyweights discovered the ultimate cheat code to human existence. They realized that true, unshakable power does not come from indulging every fleeting feeling, but from subjugating them. They understood that while the heart is a magnificent engine, it is a fatally flawed pilot. To reclaim your sovereignty, you must violently fire the heart from the executive suite of your mind and reinstate cold, uncompromising reason as the absolute authority. It is time to look at your emotions not as divine commands from the universe, but as mere data points. It is time to treat your heart not as your master, but as a wild beast that must be managed, disciplined, and ultimately transcended. To truly transcend this wild beast, we must study the exact methods of those ancient architects of the mind who walked through the fire of chaos and emerged completely untouched. When I first discovered the writings of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, I was not looking for philosophical trivia. I was a drowning man desperately searching for a raft in an ocean of my own catastrophic mistakes. What I found was a completely different paradigm of human existence. These men did not live in monasteries, shielded from the world. They led armies, managed failing empires, endured plagues, and faced betrayals that would break the modern psyche in half. Yet, they did not crumble, because they understood a fundamental truth that we have tragically forgotten. The mind is an empire, and it requires an iron-willed emperor. Society misinterprets this ancient wisdom, assuming that to master your heart is to become a cold, unfeeling robot, devoid of joy or empathy. But that is a profound misunderstanding of the Stoic rebellion. The goal was never to eradicate emotion, but to domesticate it. Imagine a wild stallion. Unbroken, it will kick down the fences, destroy the barn, and trample anyone who gets near it. But once tamed and directed by a skilled rider, that same sheer, raw power can win races and carry you across continents. Your grief, your anger, and your love are that stallion. When you strip away the romanticized illusions of modern culture, you realize that letting the stallion run wild is not freedom. It is a terrifying freefall into chaos. The ancients knew that to survive the brutal realities of existence, you had to build an inner citadel. This fortress is constructed brick by brick through the daily, agonizing practice of denying your impulses the right to rule you. It requires you to sit in the burning fire of an insult without lashing out. It demands that you feel the crushing weight of a loss without letting it convince you that your future is destroyed. You must look at the wreckage of your past and realize that every single piece of rubble was laid by a moment where you allowed your emotions to override your intellect. Rebuilding requires a ruthlessness that society will judge you for. They will call you cold. They will call you distant. But what they are truly witnessing is a person who has finally stopped bleeding out for the amusement of others. You are no longer a victim of the changing winds of mood and circumstance. You are the mountain that breaks the wind. Building this impregnable inner fortress requires a fundamental rewiring of how you process reality, beginning with the radical acceptance that your feelings are merely biological suggestions, not absolute truths. I want you to completely dismantle the way you experience an emotional reaction. When someone disrespects you, or when a sudden wave of anxiety threatens to suffocate you in the middle of the night, what is actually happening? Your brain is releasing a cocktail of cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes. Your palms sweat. It is a strictly physical, neurochemical event designed by millions of years of evolution to keep you alive in the wilderness. But you are not being hunted by a predator. You are reading an email or staring at a social media post. Yet, because we have been brainwashed to worship our feelings, we immediately validate this chemical flush as profound truth. We tell ourselves that because we feel betrayed, we are inherently a victim, or because we feel terrified, a situation is entirely hopeless. This is the fatal error. The enlightened mind steps back from this biological theater and introduces the most powerful weapon in the human arsenal, the pause. In that microsecond between a stimulus and your response lies your entire capacity for freedom. When the anger flares, you do not suppress it, but you also do not obey it. You look at it clinically. You say to yourself that you are experiencing the sensation of anger. Your heart is beating faster, and your ego wants to retaliate. You treat the emotion as raw data on a screen. A pilot flying through a violent storm does not panic when the warning lights flash on the dashboard. They read the data, adjust the altitude, and maintain a steady hand on the yoke. You must become the pilot of your own neurology. The moment you stop identifying with the emotion, the moment you realize that you are not the storm, but the unshakable consciousness observing the storm, the emotion loses its grip entirely. It becomes nothing more than passing weather. This practice is agonizing at first. Your ego will scream at you to react, to defend yourself, to seek immediate comfort. But every time you successfully endure an emotional spike without acting on it, you are forging a new neural pathway. You are proving to yourself that the heart can scream all at once, but it does not get to touch the steering wheel. Once you master this agonizing but necessary art of observing your emotions rather than blindly obeying them, the external predators that once dictated your life will find their weapons entirely neutralized. We live in an attention economy that is essentially a massive, highly sophisticated outrage machine. Every headline, every advertisement, every political campaign is meticulously engineered by algorithms and psychologists to bypass your logic and strike directly at your limbic system. They want you angry. They want you afraid. They want you desperately insecure, because an emotional human is a highly predictable, highly profitable human. When you operate strictly from the heart, you are nothing more than a puppet dancing to a tune composed by billionaires and opportunists. But when you reinstate reason as your absolute master, a profound transformation occurs. You see the strings. You look at the outrage-inducing news segment, and instead of screaming at the television, you analyze the manipulative cadence of the anchor's voice. You look at the targeted advertisement designed to make you feel inadequate, and you calmly dissect the psychological trap they laid out for you. You interact with toxic, manipulative individuals in your personal life who used to send you spiraling into days of depression or rage, and you watch their desperate attempts to trigger you with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing an insect in a jar. They can no longer hurt you because they can no longer reach you. You have relocated your identity to a place where their noise cannot penetrate. This level of psychological armor is incredibly lonely at times. You will watch the masses around you tear each other apart over manufactured dramas and fleeting desires. You will see your friends making catastrophic life choices based on the high of temporary infatuation, calling it destiny, while you know it is merely a chemical illusion that will inevitably fade. But this loneliness is a small price to pay for invulnerability. You stop buying things to fill a void that cannot be filled by commerce. You stop arguing with people whose entire identity is wrapped up in being a victim. You withdraw your energy from the parasitic systems that rely on your emotional exhaustion to survive. You become a ghost to the machines of manipulation, walking safely through the crossfire of a deeply sick society. Neutralizing these external forces of manipulation inevitably clears the smoke from your mind, leaving you to stand in the quiet, breathtaking expanse of your own absolute sovereignty. This is the ultimate destination of the rational mind, and it is a place of indescribable beauty. The greatest tragedy of the deception of the heart is the false dichotomy it creates. It convinces us that if we do not surrender to our wild emotions, our lives will be devoid of passion and color. The exact opposite is true. When you are no longer a slave to your frantic, swinging pendulum of moods, you finally have the bandwidth to experience profound, unshakable joy. Your love for others is no longer a desperate, clinging need based on what they can do for your ego, but a deliberate, powerful choice. You can love deeply precisely because you do not need them to survive. You can pursue your ambitions not out of a frantic desire to escape feelings of inadequacy, but out of a calm, purposeful expression of your unique potential. You wake up in the morning and the world is no longer a minefield of potential triggers. It is simply a chessboard. You move with intention, precision, and grace. You accept that tragedy, loss, and pain are inevitable components of the human condition, but you know with absolute certainty that they can never break you, because the core of who you are is heavily guarded behind the walls of reason. This is not a philosophy of suppression. It is the ultimate philosophy of liberation. You have reclaimed the pen, and you are finally writing your own story. The lies that shaped your childhood, the movies that sold you romanticized poison, and the culture that begged you to stay weak and impulsive are all reduced to ashes in the furnace of your disciplined mind. The heart is a beautiful thing to experience, but it is a terrible thing to follow. Let it beat. Let it feel. Let it experience the full spectrum of human existence. But when the time comes to make a decision, when the time comes to plot the course of your one and only life, banish the heart to the passenger seat. Take the wheel with cold, calculating, and unapologetic reason. That is where you will find your power, and that is exactly where you will find your ultimate peace. The journey from emotional chaos to absolute mental sovereignty is the ultimate human rebellion against a world that profits from our lack of control. As these passages illuminate, true power does not lie in the suppression of human emotion, but in its meticulous domestication. We exist in a hyper-connected, modern landscape specifically engineered to trigger our deepest fears, outrage, and insecurities, attempting to reduce us to predictable, profitable subjects. By treating our emotions as biological raw data rather than absolute truths, we introduce the most formidable weapon in our psychological arsenal, the deliberate pause between stimulus and response. This crucial pause allows reason to reclaim the driver's seat. Through the daily, agonizing practice of denying our fleeting impulses the right to dictate our actions, we construct an impenetrable inner citadel. Once this fortress is built, external manipulations bounce off our psychological armor. We stop reacting to the outrage economy and toxic individuals, observing their attempts to provoke us with detached, clinical clarity. Ultimately, This disciplined approach does not drain life of its color. Rather, it amplifies it. It grants us the emotional bandwidth to love deliberately, pursue our ambitions purposefully, and endure inevitable tragedy without crumbling. By relegating the heart to the passenger seat and letting the intellect take the wheel, we step into a quiet, unshakable majesty. We cease being fragile victims of circumstance and transform into the undeniable architects of our own destiny, discovering our greatest peace within our highest rational power. Your emotions are merely passing weather, not the compass by which you should navigate your life. Society constantly conditions us to worship our feelings, which makes us incredibly vulnerable to manipulation by media, corporations, and toxic individuals. True freedom is born the exact moment you realize you are the unshakable consciousness observing the storm, not the storm itself. By divorcing your core identity from your temporary emotional states, you unlock an invincible inner peace that no external tragedy or targeted manipulation can ever destroy. Master the micropause. When triggered by a disrespectful comment, a stressful text, or a sudden wave of anxiety, do not react immediately. Force a strict 10-second pause. Acknowledge the physical sensation. My heart is racing. My ego feels attacked. Treat it purely as raw biological data and consciously choose a rational, calculated response. Dissect the manipulation. The next time you consume news, social media, or advertisements that make you feel outraged or deeply insecure, step back and analyze the mechanics of the message. Ask yourself, how is this intentionally designed to trigger my limbic system? Seeing the strings automatically cuts the puppet's ties. Observe, do not absorb. Stop arguing with people or engaging with digital environments that thrive on your emotional exhaustion. When faced with toxic behavior, observe their desperate attempts to trigger you with the clinical detachment of a scientist looking at an insect in a jar. Protect your energy and redirect it toward your actual life goals. What is one specific situation in your daily life where you find it most difficult to control your emotions, and how could you use the pause to handle it better next time? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below so we can all learn and grow from each other's perspectives. If you found value in this message and want to support the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Your support gives us the vital motivation to keep creating more profound, high-quality content for you.